Hello, lovelies. Welcome to Wednesday. It has been at least a sunny, beautiful day in Joburg. I spent the whole day doing spring cleaning in the house. I just couldn't face it anymore. So it's the first time I'm sitting in front of any device today. It's been a new day for me to not have any phones, computers, tech. It was really nice to just have a complete break from tech. So I put a post on today that's gotten quite a big response around the shadow. You know, you can't ever run from your shadow, but you can invite it to dance. And the shadow never ceases to really amaze people and interest people, and people always just want to know more and more and more about the shadow. So I thought, let me talk a little bit about that today. So I think a lot of you are experiencing, especially if you're staying in lockdown with your partner, a lot of deeper shadow stuff is starting to emerge throughout lockdown. And you will really experience your shadow in the greatest way in your relationships. And when you are in lockdown and you can't get away, and you can't just keep using the same avoidance techniques to not be facing the stuff that's going on, you're going to come face to face with your shadow quite big time during lockdown. And I think a lot of you are. And I think a lot of the fear and a lot of the anxiety and a lot of the stress going on with a lot of people through lockdown is a lot of their shadow stuff. So what is the shadow? Sorry, I've got a very dry throat today. I have to drink some water. Okay, so for those of you who've worked with me before, you're going to know a lot of this, but I'm just going to go through it all over again. And this is live, so if you've got any questions, put them as I'm talking. The shadow is basically the stuff within us that we disown about ourselves. Our shadow self are all of those characteristics and all of those aspects within us that we don't want to own, that we reject, that we suppress, and that we walk away from, pretending we are not that thing. And this happens throughout our childhood. You know, creating the shadow happens in childhood, because all you want in childhood is the absolute approval of the parents or the caregivers or the teachers. And you're going to do whatever you can to ensure that you're getting the happy face from them at all times, and the acknowledgement and the acceptance at all time. So just briefly, you know, if you do something when you're younger that gets met with disapproval or rejection, it then becomes a part of you that you're going to disapprove of and reject within yourself, because you're so fearful of what the reaction could be again if you reveal that part of yourself, that it's just safer to keep it locked away and you don't reveal that stuff. So we go into a real kind of culling of ourself when we were younger, to only bring forth the parts of ourselves that people like, that people acknowledge, that people approve of, that get the happy faces. And the people who give us the unhappy faces or the rejection or the judgment or the reactions, we learn to shut that side of ourselves down. And any of you, I would hope that all of you can relate to this in your own childhoods, but especially those of you who are parents and you can see it happening with your own kids, that they'll hear that tone of voice with you, and suddenly they get all very scared and shut down and disconnect, or they'll see that you're open, and then they kind of blossom and they come forward and they engage a lot more. So your shadow is the kind of collection of all of the aspects of yourself that you have rejected throughout your life. And why it's a problem is because basically you are completely rejecting half of who you are. You know, you're rejecting you. And it is the biggest fear we have is rejection. And when it comes to relationships, especially our intimate relationships, we just don't want to be rejected. Here's the problem, though, is that you can't be in any kind of authentic, real, open, honest, giving, alive relationship if you are not bringing all of who you are to that relationship. And if you are in your relationship acting, and when I say acting, I don't mean you're pretending, I mean putting forward a role of who you are in the world in the hopes that your partner will stay in love with you and will like you and want to be with you longer, whilst keeping your shadow stuff suppressed and hidden. Please don't convince yourselves that that's never going to emerge in your relationship. Your partner is going to end up seeing that stuff. And you know, when I work with couples and they come and see me, the phrase they use is, well, this is where the cracks begin to show. I begin to see a part of my partner, or I begin to see a behavior or personality that was never there before. No, it was always there. It was just in suppression. And over time in relationship, we start getting comfortable with each other and we start trusting each other enough to be able to reveal those parts of ourselves we've kept hidden for a very long time. And that for me is when relationships can really grow and thrive and become something so much more if you are willing to bring forward that part of those hidden things. So, Nikki, how do you stop carrying your past into your future? Not a simple question, not expecting a simple answer. Oh, thank God for that, because I don't know a simple answer to that. Let me see if I can get to that through the video, my love. So, when people say, you know, why is it worth doing shadow work? Why do we need to investigate these parts of ourselves? Why do we have to bring them out? Because you're living a half life if you don't. Because you are relying on a half version of yourself to be able to handle all of the events of your life and all of the relationships of your life in a half way. Because maybe the suppressed aspects of yourself are far more capable of dealing with the life events in your life and the relationships in your life. But you keep them suppressed so they don't get a chance to kind of be a part of the gang, so to speak, to help you handle all of the stuff that's going on. So people get confused with this. Let me see if I can be clearer. We all know the nice girls and the nice guys. You know, the nice ones who will just do anything for you, and they say yes all the time, and they always put you first, and they'll make sure everybody else's needs are, you know, addressed before their own. The word bitch is not a word you'd use to describe a nice girl. You know, she's nice, she's polite, and she's sweet, and she's accommodating. But here's the problem with the nice girl, is that she has absolutely no boundaries. And the nice girl very often becomes a doormat because she just says yes all the time, even when she wants to say no. And she appeases everybody else's needs before her own. And she's there to make her partner happy and her kids happy and her boss happy and her colleagues happy. So she ends up giving more when really she doesn't want to, but she doesn't know how to say no because she doesn't have any boundaries. Now, if people are constantly violating your boundaries, sometimes it is required to bring forward quite a strong aspect of yourself in order to put that boundary back in place. Now, somebody would maybe use a word, bitch, to describe someone who gets a bit tough in putting a boundary in place. If that's a word you wanted to use, great. You know, there's lots of other words you could use, but let's use the example of the nice girl. If that just one too many times her boss has crossed a line with her, one too many times her partner has violated a boundary with her, and she can't take it anymore, and a part of her emerges to kind of go like, I'm done, don't ever speak to me like that again, don't ever treat me like that again. She's using a tone of voice, she's using a physical body language, and she's using a behavior that she's probably never used before. And that is when she is engaging a different aspect of herself that has to put a boundary in place because her nice girl is incapable of doing it. So other people would say, oh, you know, she's having a nervous breakdown. Oh my God, what's going on with her? Is everything fine? Of course everything is fine. She's just finding out that she's actually made of far more than she thought she was when she's willing to engage the stuff that she thought was so bad. So shadow work and the shadow coaching that I do is about introducing you back to those shadow aspects within yourself. You know, they are all absolutely fantastic. All of them are there to serve you in certain life circumstances. All of them are there to aid you and to bring a gift into your life if you recognize them, look at them, engage them, embrace them, and integrate them into your whole. So when you are in a relationship, and why people are struggling so much in lockdown at the moment, is you just kind of keep bringing the same version of yourself to your relationship, expecting a different result. You keep engaging conflict in the same way. You keep engaging intimacy in the same way. You keep engaging meal times. I don't know, list it. You know, everything you're doing with your partner is the same way, the same version of yourself again and again. But this fear-based stuff and this anxiety stuff that's going on with us is really your shadow wanting to emerge. You know, it's all that stuff that you haven't been looking at or facing in your life that now needs a bit of attention. And the way that you can identify this is to see what is triggering you in other people's behaviors. So when you are triggered by an external event or another person, that is a huge indicator of what shadow aspect in yourself you are not looking at. So if you are really triggered by somebody's ignorance, somebody talking on the news, and you think that, geez, they're so ignorant about this whole thing, and it's really triggering you and getting a reaction in you, then ignorance is your shadow aspect that you need to work on. Because where in your life are you being ignorant? And of course, everybody's response is, but I'm not being ignorant. I'm not ignorant. You know, you go into total defensiveness. That's another clue that you're disowning your shadows when you're completely defensive. So think about the things you would never want people to say about you. If somebody was describing you, what words would you never want them to use to describe you? And therein lies a bit of your work. Why wouldn't you want people to see you as that? What is wrong with being that? You know, what is wrong with being ignorant? What is wrong with being stupid? What is wrong with being mean? What is wrong with being selfish? Think of all the traits that trigger you in other people, and then look at where you're not owning that stuff about yourself. So it's a big idea to get into a single video shadow work, but I think in your partnerships during lockdown, have a look at where you're pointing your finger at your partner a lot in their behavior. They being so lazy, they being so unhelpful, they being so self-absorbed, they being so unconscious. Whatever's coming up for you about your partner during lockdown is the mirror of what you're not looking at within yourself. And guys, sometimes the relationship isn't directly with the person who's bringing up that behavior for you. In other words, if you feel that your partner is being selfish and it's triggering you, your selfishness may not be directly related to your partner. Your selfishness may be in other areas of your life. Maybe you're being selfish with a coworker by not doing the work you said you do. You know, maybe you're being a bit selfish with your time, not making it available to your family. So just pay attention to where you're being triggered, and look to see where you are bringing that stuff, where you are not facing that stuff in your own life. So another good question, do the triggers ever go away? No, they don't. You know, there's so many shadow aspects that we have. I don't feel that we ever work through all of them. So shadows will present themselves for your life. You know, they're always going to present, but I just see them as a huge gift for you to really look at, oh, there's some more work I need to do on my life that I wasn't paying attention to. So yes, your triggers are the kind of red alarm bell that tells you that you need to start paying attention to your own behavior, to doing your own work. Of course, the triggers get less. They get much less, and your reactiveness gets a lot less. But they will always be there because you're not paying attention, and because most of us live in an unconscious way. So, you know, Nikki, your answer, your question, how do you stop carrying your past into your future? It was unresolved. You know, the story of whatever you're carrying hasn't been cleared. And I don't know what story you're referring to, if we're talking about patterns around work, around money, if we're talking about relationship issues. And if you carry, you know, you keep carrying those same patterns into your future or your current life, it's that the work hasn't been done to clear that stuff. You haven't found the resolution there. So I think maybe that's a question I'll look at on Friday's session, is how do we stop carrying old behaviors into the present, old relationship patterns into future relationships? That's a very good question, and let me do a whole session of that on Friday. So that's your shadow. Yeah. Send me any questions if you're not clear about any of that. As always, I highly recommend my favorite person, Debbie Ford's books. If shadow is something that intrigues you and you really want to do work on yourself, then go and get this book. I hope it's not the other way around. So Debbie Ford, The Secret of the Shadow. It's the most amazing book. She was the most amazing human being, did the most incredible work. And investigate your shadow a bit. So sending you all lots of love, and I will see you again on Friday at 5 o'clock.